In my childhood home, there was a bathroom in the hallway. If you looked in the mirror while washing your hands, you could see down the hallway toward the front door. At night, I would often see a tall, bald man in a gray suit standing there out of the corner of my eye, but he would disappear if I looked directly at him or turned around. We moved out of the house, but years later I told my mom about it. Surprised and a little scared, she said she saw the same thing for years. It was a little creepy, but I thought since we both saw the same thing out the mirror in the same spot, it was probably a trick of the light. Oddly enough, in a separate conversation with my little brother, he mentioned seeing a man in that hallway all the time. I chuckled and said, "Out of the corner of your eye in the downstairs bathroom mirror." He said, "No, I would see him at the opposite end of the same hallway, but when looking down from upstairs, what did he look like?" He was tall and always wore a gray suit. What's weird is that for years, we were all seeing the same man in the same hallway, but just kept our fear to ourselves. Not until half a decade later, after we had moved out of the house, did we realize we had all been experiencing the same thing.
My family and I were traveling from Western Kentucky to Florida for vacation. After a long day of driving, we ate waffles and other breakfast miscellany at one of those all-night breakfast places and were looking for somewhere to sleep for the night. But everywhere was full. When we finally saw a hotel lacking a lit-up no vacancy sign, it was a Days Inn in Dothan, Alabama. I needed to stretch my legs, and my game gear had died, so I went into the front office with my dad to get the room. The woman, tired and barely contained by her hotel employee's uniform, told us we're all booked up. But her coworker said something like, "What about 229? And she paused for a second, looked at me, and then at my dad and said, "Well, yeah, I guess you could take 229. Would you like 229? Well, yeah, why not? Sure." And so began the strangest night I've ever experienced. We settled in for bed almost instantly. My brother and I in one, my parents in the other. Something seemed off about the room, but we were too tired to care. At around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up to my mom screaming, and my dad sitting straight up in bed. "There's a man in the room. Hey, who are you? What are you doing in here?" We all woke up, and there was this dark figure of a large man in the room, standing over my parents' bed. My brother dove for the light switch, and the room came into this sudden, quiet focus. I remember thinking later about what might be a more appropriate or effective thing to say when you're encountered by a large, dark figure standing at the foot of your bed. But in the moment, nothing was there. Just an old, shitty TV, a mini fridge, and a mirror. We all sat there for a moment, trying to figure out what just happened. My dad said, "We're leaving." And we were back on the road as fast as we fell asleep. Later on, my parents discussed it. My mother apparently only saw a man. My father saw a man, as well as a dog. I just remember seeing shapes. We scoured the internet to see if anything weird had happened in the hotel that year. I even tried calling the hotel years later, but it had since gone under new management. From time to time, we always wonder what happened in that room. I've been a person who was never sure what to believe in when it related to ghosts, but this experience has boggled my mind. I was around 12 or so, and my cousin, my brother, and I were all hanging out in our family room, watching movies. It was around midnight, and my mom had been in bed for a few hours. I looked up and saw, at least what I thought was, my mom walk past the entryway to the family room, from the living room to the kitchen. My brother even called out, "Hey, Mom." No response. She just walked right past without acknowledging us and into the kitchen and out of view. She was wearing a long, flowing, almost white nightgown. Keep in mind that the entire house is pitch black, except for the light of the TV. A couple seconds later, we were wondering what was going on, so we got up and glanced in the kitchen. Nothing, just darkness. We started freaking out, and all three ran down the hallway, through the living room, and burst into her room. She was lying in bed and passed out, very clearly fast asleep. We woke her up and asked if she was just in the kitchen. She leaned up to figure out what was happening, and she was wearing blue pajamas, not a white nightgown. We freaked out. I didn't know what to think. There's a door that connects the kitchen to her room, but that door was always wedged shut and would make a loud creaking and scraping noise once it was shoved open. No one used that door. We were up and heading towards her room in a matter of seconds. She wouldn't have had time to walk past us, shove open and close that door, and change her clothes. We have no idea who or what we saw walk past the kitchen that night. I would have convinced myself I was seeing things, but my brother called her name. He saw it too. I am not making this up. It's been over 10 years. I am 24 years old now, and the thought still gives me weird goosebumps, and for some reason, I start to tear up when I think too much about it. I'm an intellectual and rational person, but if you ask me if I believe in ghosts, I can't comfortably say no.